Welcome back to another great episode of Comedians in Bed, where comedians could be comedians. And I don't really know what that means, but it just sounds like something you should say on the podcast. Our next guest is very funny, very talented. He's been doing great things. He started here in Columbus and he was like, you know what? I've outgrown this scene. Bump it. Now, everywhere, wherever he goes, man, people say his name. I've found out about him just from other people that say he's hot in this city. And I was like, what? And they was like, yeah, he actually started in Columbus. And I was like, what? So how to get him on the show, how to talk to him, how to pick his brain a little bit, see where he's at in his journey after leaving Columbus. Everybody, please give it up for Setoiyo. What's going on, man? How you feeling?
I feel good, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man. Glad to have you, bro. How's your day going so far?
So far, so good, man. You know, we woke up, did the business, took care of the body, rode a little bit, hit the gym, and now we're here to talk shop.
Yeah, man. I love it. Yeah, that's always a good day when you woke up, especially being in Philly.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Every day that you wake up in Philly is a blessing because you woke up again.
What is like? I've only been to Philadelphia one time. What is living in Philadelphia like?
Fun. It's fun. There's a lot to do. It's a very honest city. It is wild at times. You know, they're like it's a very black city, which is really cool. Um, it doesn't produce bad artists. So if you want to come to Philly to do arts or entertainment, you're going to be in a sea full of other sharks who are also very talented. And it's too expensive, and the driving is terrible. So, but the people are kind. So
That's what's up. Has your musical palette changed since you've been in Philly? Because I don't think a lot of people realize how many talented musical artists they have in Philadelphia.
yeah, it hasn't changed because I was really like even when I was in Columbus, I was big into a lot of the Philly music to begin with, whether it was like neo soul or I was really into the roots when I was, in my 20s. And because there was a period of time where Philly kind of ran rap. And that's when I was in my late teens, like the state property era. I'm in my teenage years at that time. So I had always kind of gravitated towards that anyway. And I was a big house music person in Columbus. So coming to Philly, it was a good fit, really, musically. I've been very pleased.
How's it? Only really. I mean, I'm learning the different sounds of house music. Does Philly has its own house music sound, or is that typically just like Chicago or Detroit, DC?
Philly's more soulful than I think. So like Columbus has a very distinct house music sound, but it's more like Chicago. So it's Midwestern, whereas Philly house is very soulful. A lot of singing, like a lot of just black singing from the soul type stuff. So it's closer, I think, maybe to not even I don't even think it's really comparable to New York. They're both soulful, but Philly house is really soulful more than anything else.
Okay, okay. Check that out. Philly. Uh, are the cheesesteaks? Because I didn't get one. I was up there. Are the cheesesteaks worth the hype, or is it like, yeah, you had one, you had them all?
I mean, they're worth it, just not passing Geno's. Like, fuck those guys. But in terms of like everywhere else, yeah, if you go to like a poppy store, what's like a convenience store in the area, you can get you a cheesesteak and they'll be good. I'm at an age now where I can't be doing that type of stuff to my body because but it's a lot. They are they are flavorful. They're worth it, just not Pat Geno's.
That's what's up, man. That's what's up. One thing I like to ask people who move to a different city, uh, who was Setoiyo before in Columbus, and who is Setoiyo now in Philadelphia?
Mm. Um. Well, Setoiyo, who I was before I moved to Philly, I was someone who very much understood I had to get out of Columbus. And that was an indictment of me. That was not an indictment of Columbus. It's just that Columbus is my hometown. And that when I started in comedy, I got to, and especially at the time, I was one of like maybe one or two Black open micers, and also being West African. So I had creative license to do and say a lot of shit that I don't think would have really flown anywhere else. And I was pretty conscious of that. So I was someone who just knew I needed to leave. So, but the only reason I really was able to get away with that was because like Columbus was home. It was a very safe environment that was not going to, I wasn't going to push myself in Columbus because I'm home. So I realized that I needed to take myself away from home into a bigger environment to force myself to push myself to become the type of performer I wanted to be. So now who I am now is someone who quite likes going home because it's a lot quieter and more chill. So that's who I am now, but also still very much like very aware that leaving was the very necessary thing for me to do, especially at that time.
Yeah. Dang, that would be on my mind as soon as I pay the rent. I'll be like, damn, I moved to Columbus just because I need to get out. Now I gotta pay
this. Hey, I mean, like the thing about it is, you miss a driveway. That's one thing I'll say. Columbus got driveways, brother. You got a driveway. You guys got parking lots, space. Boy, some space. Space is all right.
What was like one of the biggest shockers to you when you moved to Philly?
I saw Black cops. Like I saw Black cops, and I would see Black female police officers who had just gotten their hair done. So I got to move to a city. Like I was like, oh, this is a city job for them. Whereas the what police are in Columbus, especially back then, is much different. You know, they're overly white and everything like that. So coming to a city that's majority Black and just seeing Black cops, and they weren't a clear and present threat of any kind. They were just like, dude, I'm doing my 20 years and I'm getting out. That was kind of one of the bigger culture shocks for me.
Yeah. I see that. Yeah, that's how I be feeling when I go to Atlanta. Hella Black cops.
Yeah.
Hella Black cops.
Yep.
That's what's up. Now, we did connect for a short period of time in the Columbus Comedy Festival. You leaving the Columbus comedy scene and then seeing that they have their own festival. We're having more clubs pop up in the Columbus scene. How would you describe the Columbus comedy scene where you were here versus from what you can see from afar? How is it now?
Man, it had the Columbus comedy scene, like you take the scene now and you put it, goodness, well over a decade ago, 14, 15 years ago, I probably would have left a lot later. I mean, it's so much bigger now. You know, you guys have multiple clubs, you know, in the city, which is awesome. There was only one club back then, and it was hard as hell to get in, and there were very few showcases. We had a couple open mics, and we had Surly Girl Saloon open mic on Wednesday, which was like, that was the show mic. If you didn't have any shows, you went to Surly Girl on High Street because it would bring an actual crowd. And that's where you sort of worked on your craft. It was a lot of experimentation, man, because there weren't too many places to do comedy. It was so small. It was like 10% of what y'all have now. I can't. It was so incredibly small. Like we were really. It was amazing that it was amazing looking back at it now to see what Columbus has become, because, bro, like no one knew of Columbus comics. You knew of like Cleveland comics, Cincy comics. You may have known a couple standout comedians from Columbus. There was like a couple, but like we were nowhere to be seen.
Yeah. No, I get that. When you got your own show at the festival, how did that, was that like a full circle moment, or how did that make you feel?
I wanted to sell tickets. It's, you know, it was cool to be asked and everything like that. full circle, I don't know. I tend to I'm not overly prone to sentiment in that way, especially with respects to comedy. I try not to be really sentimental. I was very thankful that they wanted me to be a part of their festival in that capacity. So my main objective was just to do right by them and by myself by trying to sell as many tickets as possible. Given that there was so much comedy happening that week, so for me it was how can I convince enough people to come through when there's like I think like over 100 some odd shows within that week of just nonstop. How do I convince people to take time out of their week to come see me for an hour and a half? So that was my main thought process on the whole thing.
Yeah. Given where you're at now of your comedy career, what is like your main goal right now? Like one thing that you're focused on right now in your career right now?
Getting more people to see my comedy. So because how the game kind of works now is, it's all kind of follower based. You know what I'm saying? Like people and clubs and everything, they can trust in you and they can trust in your ability and they can know that you're a talented comedian. However, if you have like 100,000 to 200,000 followers, the conversation gets a lot easier. So just putting more eyes on my comedy is my main goal in the grander scheme of things. Of course, you want to continue writing, cultivating, because who I was 5 years ago is a little different than who I am now. So you want the material to reflect that. So that's after the building the following thing, building it more is then, continuing to grow as a comedian.
How did you adjust to comedy knowing that when you first came in, it was still kind of, I guess, traditional where you get in a club, you become a regular, work your way up, but now you can just get booked because you have a certain amount of followers on social media. How have you adjusted to that?
It was wild to see, man. I mean, I started basically kind of in the YouTube era. I used to record everything and post things online and all that stuff before it was really the thing to do. So to start doing comedy in a very quote unquote traditional way, working your way up through the club circuit, to then see it change, you could see the change coming. Like I could see it coming. And that was really interesting. And then we went inside for a couple of years because of COVID. And then coming back outside and being like, oh my God, now you're following kind of is the thing that matters most to the general populace and to keep into like companies, businesses, clubs, and things like that. That was kind of interesting to see, but I saw it trending in that direction because we had to be inside for 2 years, and I would just see people build these massive followings, and as they built their massive followings, they were able to basically go anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. What was your how many years have you been doing comedy?
Ooh, 15.
And why haven't you given up yet? What keeps you going?
I really dig being up there. I think as Lenny Bruce said, I really like being on stage. I really do get a lot from that. I think it's fun to make people laugh. It's a fun thing to do. And also, I think after a certain point, like I'm so far in now that it's like, and I still get pleasure from doing it, that I might as well continue. If at any point I don't get pleasure from being on stage, then I'll address it then. But also, it's like also how I how I pay my bills. So you kind of have to keep going. And also,
what was your first moment? What was your first like, oh, I'm in Philly moment, as far as like just being a resident and being a comedian?
When it really hit me that like I'm in the shit, I think there's a spot called the Raven Lounge in Philly, and it was like a who's who of comedians will come through to the Raven Lounge. And it was like a club, man. It was like a whole, like it had multiple floors, 3 floors, and it was like a party. There'd be, you know, a DJ downstairs, and there'd be stand-up comedy on the second floor. And like the people who would work at the clubs, the comedy clubs, would come through to Raven after the show to either perform and hang out. So you get famous comics pulling up there all the time. So it's the third week that I'm in the city. And I went up the second week at the Raven Lounge pretty early, and I had a pretty fine set. And then the next week I went up second to last in front of no one except the host and the 2 hosts who were still there. And I went back the next week, and the same thing happened. No one was in the audience. I'm telling my jokes to the same 2 hosts, and I missed the last train because I lived, the Raven Lounge was in downtown, and I lived deep in South Philly at the time. And I missed the last train, and I walked home about 2.5 miles in the pouring rain. And I got home, thought about it real hard, woke up the next day feeling like shit, woke up the day after sick as a dog, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm really in Philly now. Yeah.
No, I definitely understand that. That's crazy. How long do the trains last out there? I'm saying they don't go all night long.
No, they run for 19 hours.
Oh,
so they take, so like at that time back then, I think the last train was close to like 1 o'clock or so. So I had long missed that because the club would stay open, Raven Lounge would stay open until 2 a.m. So I knew I was missing the train. I just didn't know my ass was going to be walking home in the rain. Had I known I was going to be walking home in the rain, I might have thought better of it.
How did you work your way up to Philly scene? Because I was in a show in Chicago, and I think I told him where I was from, and Trayvon Fulton, I think is his name. He came in, he mentioned you, and a lot of people mention you when they come out, when they talk about the Philly scene. So how did you, you're not from there, you worked your way up. How did you do that?
Spite and dogged persistence. Nah, man, I kept on, the formula for what Philly was we don't know you. And at the time, I'm still pretty new. I'm still pretty green. I've only got like a couple years in me. So and Philly had many more shows and so many more mics. So I just went to every show, went to every mic, would go up whenever. At the really, really popular mics, I'd go up super duper late, like, fuck you, we don't know you, we don't care, get to the back of the line, and I just worked my way up from there. And I would go to the comedy club, Helium, and I would sign up for their open mic, and I'd do my 3 minutes there. Every single week they let me go on. I just do my 3 minutes and try to make a good impression. And then I did the Philly Funniest competition, and I made it pretty far the first year, and I beat out some of the hosts. That's how it was explained to me. Like, some hosts didn't advance what I did, and that happened for 1 year, and I just kept on going to the mic again. And from 3 minutes, it went to 5 minutes at the mic at Helium, and then I started running the Raven Lounge because I was one of the guys who was just always there. So then I got to help run the Raven Lounge, which was very prestigious at the time. And I just kind of was everywhere, man. I didn't really have much else to do but be a comic and to learn how to be a comedian and to work. And then back then at Helium, you used to have to audition to be a host. So they called it the Host Showdown. And you would have to go to the club. They did it like a showcase. So it would be you and like 7 other comics. You all had to do 12 minutes, and it had to be 12 minutes of clean material because not every headliner wants their opener cursing or being blue. So I went there, did that audition, did my 12 minutes. It was clean, went first, had a great set, and I got passed on my first try. And sometimes people have had to audition a number of times in order to get past. But that's just sort of how it worked out for me. That, like all that shit I just described, is not how it works anymore. But at the time, man, I just kind of got after it to the best of my ability and made sure that I was good at my job, and especially back then, relatively pleasant to be around.
Yeah, that's important. How did the Philly scene help your comedic growth?
It demands honesty. So Philly's one of those places where it's like you know you can't bullshit a bullshitter. So if they sense bullshit, they just don't have too much tolerance for it. So you learn how to cut through the bullshit within yourself. It does force you to be very self-reflective, I think. Also, I was away from home, so I was learning a lot about myself and what I could take, and maybe what I could not take. And Philly was really, really good for that. Philly's very quick at that time, whereas in Columbus at the time, you of course be funny, but you get the ability to take your time with things in Columbus in a way that you could not in Philly. Like you get up on stage in Philly, they're like, "Why aren't we laughing already?" Like, so you had to learn how to get to it like really, really quickly and have various styles of jokes. So you can be a storyteller, but there better be a lot of jokes in there. Or you better learn how to throw a one-liner. You better learn how to do callbacks. So it demanded a lot from you because you're just around a lot of killers, like legitimately tremendous comedians back then. So iron sharpens iron in that regard.
Yeah. So was it something like you were like noticing on stage, like, oh, why aren't they laughing? And you went home, evaluated, and came back and just kept getting better? Or was a part of your process also watching other well-established Philly comedians and seeing how they're doing it, asking questions, anything like that?
So it's definitely a combination of the two. I would record every set that I did because for as much as I write, sometimes I'm extemporaneous, especially back then. I would just say things off the cuff. And so I would record everything to know how I sounded, the way I said things, how I stood, where I put the mic stand. So I was constantly gaining information in that regard. Also, it helped me really, really be comfortable in my own voice when I was performing. So I could see what was working. I could hear it in real time. And then I go back and I like watch like my sets throughout the week and fucking suffer. You know what I'm saying? Like, and just watch all of them and take the good, leave out the bad, or be like, you do this thing too much that isn't helpful, get rid of it. And then, you're just watching established professionals in Philly or just like headliners from across the nation come into the Raven Lounge or be at Helium, and you're just watching them. Like you think you're doing a different activity. You know what I'm saying? Like, so after a while, it just makes you get sharper in that way.
It's something that you said. Dang, it was something that you said that I so forgot. It's okay. So you were watching them. Did you were watching your sets? Yeah, I forgot what it was. I was trying to grab it, but it's gone.
It's all right. It's meant to be.
Yeah. So, what was like your Philly? I guess you could say your Philly moment that made you feel as if you were. I don't like the word accept, but like embraced in the Philly scene, like they embrace you as their own.
I don't know if it was a matter of embracing. I think it was maybe a matter of tolerating. I think honestly, probably when I got passed at a comedy club, it was just like, oh, well, because it was one of those things, and this might be, this might get taken strange. But as I've said to people before, I was like, no, I mean, the scene respected me when the professional establishments hired me. You know what I'm saying? Like, so all of a sudden when the professional establishment said, yeah, he's funny, he's with us, that's when kind of everybody else who I wasn't close with or connected with was like, I guess he's in then. So that's kind of how it happened. I had my group of people, of course, my group of comedians who I hung with and who I was cool with. But no, it was kind of like Helium being like, no, he's passed as a regular here, and some comics being like, what the fuck? So then it became that, and I guess through the years, it's like in Columbus, people will know of me but not know me. You just keep on doing shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I be telling myself this, like Columbus is just practice until I go to a bigger scene. Then I feel like I'll be like, I mean, I tell people I'm a comedian, I do comedy, but like I don't know. I feel like I won't feel like one until I just feel like there's a lot that we're still missing here. Like we don't have that opportunity to go into a good club. I'll say that. Go into a good club and they respect you as an artist, even though you're at the bottom of the totem pole, and they give you an opportunity. So it's kind of like you still fighting for scraps along with your peers, and like the higher up people don't even care. Like, you know,
it's one of those things, man. Like that kind of never ends. Unfortunately, like I've talked to famous comedians and worked with famous comedians, and their gripes sound very similar to yours. It's just your placement in the grand scheme of things may change, right? This whole thing is kind of a ladder, right? So or the pay scale may go up. Although the money in comedy is pretty terrible, but it's like it's one of those things where that's a constant. You know what I'm saying? Like there are very few people, there are very few comedians who are not echoing the sentiment that you are echoing right now. And I do think there is something to be said for, I call it, don't play to the back of the room. The thing that helped me a lot as a performer is I'm not here to make comedians laugh. That is not my intention at all. I wish them well. I have no issue. But if I have people in front of me and I make them laugh, and I do that every single time I'm on stage, that's what matters. It's not because the comics will go where the people tell the comics to go. And that's a lot of what I realized in Philly. It's like, if I make the audience laugh, then it doesn't really matter what anyone else says. So long as I'm professional and decent to people, if I make that audience laugh, well, the comedians will just fall in line because they don't really have a choice. You can't deny laughter. You can dislike how it's happening, perhaps, but you kind of got to get over that at some point and just be like, well, no, he's just fucking funny.
Yeah. Here I just focus on get as much stage time as possible and just write as much as possible. Because I just focus on what I can control. You know what I mean? Just focusing on what you can control.
As you should.
Control is being funny. Can't really control if someone likes you or if they put you up. So that's just what I be focusing on here. But I do like. So when I first started, I didn't like the Columbus scene, but I like it now because I have a more understanding of comedy and how to climb up the ranks. And I'm like, all right, right now at this level. Okay, I can control, which is writing and stage time. So, that's the question that I have. Thank you, Holy Ghost. You said something about your body on stage, and I feel as if I'm still learning to get comfortable on stage. So, my question to you is, when it comes to your body on stage, because that's the one thing I'm being more cognizant of. Like, how am I standing on stage? Like, I still feel like I'm just moving around too much. I got my hand in my pocket. I'm leaning on the stool, and it's just like I'm not, comfortable. Yeah, I do attribute that to like not being on stage more. But how did you learn how to use your body when you're telling your jokes and stuff?
Just being cognizant. Again, filming everything really helps because I wanted to know what was happening with my body, and I would get to a place where I would know exactly how I would look on stage. So filming myself really, really helped. Also, prior to comedy, I was a professional dancer, hip hop dancer. So I had a pretty good idea of how to use my body anyway. So there was that. But honestly, a lot of it was filming myself because when you're on stage, every part of your body can be used as a joke. So it's in your interest. If you are a person who can be physical, use that to your advantage. And I wanted my body, what I wore, how I placed myself, how I stood. I wanted all of that to be perfectly aligned. And if I stood a certain way, I literally have jokes where the punchline is a body stance. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's because like I know what I look like. I know how I should stand to make this joke work. So stuff like that I found to be very important that I developed through, I mean, as it's very self-interested, but just watching myself a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like you have to get like I was annoying. I was annoying with it. I would just bring the camera everywhere and I'd set that motherfucker up and I would just go. And I would know where the camera was. If someone stood in front of my camera, I'd very quickly be like, move out of my camera and go into my next joke. And then I just watch everything that I did afterward.
Yeah. I am cognitive of what jokes I'm telling that day and what I should wear that'll make this joke more funnier. But I'm not cognitive. I'm starting to be cognitive of like how am I standing and stuff. So I would, when you will watch back and you would see it. So that's one thing. But when you're on stage, because they just see us being funny, but they don't know there's a lot going on up here. So how do you stay cognitive of okay, I have to stand this way to make it funny, like remember it, because sometimes you could be in the atmosphere and you might be all the way somewhere else, and then you got to be like, oh, I got to stand this way when it comes to this part. So how did you be cognitive of your body on stage, even though you had that experience with dancing?
Like I said, through the application of filming myself all the time, because I was really obsessed with the idea of like, okay, how do I become, when I knew I wanted to really do this and give this a go, how do I become a professional as quickly as I possibly can? And what makes a professional, right? So that, okay, cool. Then body posture is a part of the gig. Well, you know what? Then I'm going to really hone in and focus in on that. And I would be recording myself knowing what I look like, if that makes sense. So I'd record myself being on stage, doing my thing. And I thought to myself, I know exactly what I'll look like when I watch this back, because I had done it so many times to the point that now it's just in there. So like, I just conditioned my brain that now when I'm on stage, I'm just hyper aware of it. Like I am everything else when I'm on stage. You just add it to the list of things you have to be mindful of. And you don't relent from that. You don't back away from that. You hold yourself to account for that. If you're lucky enough, you'll have friends who will tell you when you do something physically that's off-putting so that you can stop doing that. Funny story. I remember one time I was working a club and I was supposed to meet this girl for a date. And I had never met her before. And I'm in front of like 300 people. And I fucking crush. Like I crush. And I don't say that shit a lot because I think that's an overused term. But no, I made 300 women just laugh their asses off. So I'm like, brother, it's in the bag, brother. Okay, I've got it. It's fine. She gonna love me. It's gonna be great. It's fine. Because I'd seen her picture. She was very attractive. And this girl texted me and I'm like, hey, where are you? So because I was gonna bring her back to the green room to formally introduce myself. And she was like, hey, you were really funny, but your posture was very off-putting. So I think I'm going to pass. And I'm like looking at my phone and I show it to the booker and he just looks at me and he's like, hey man, comedy keeps you honest. like just had a laugh about it. So, and then even in watching that set back, because I recorded that set, it was like, oh damn, I see what I did there. Now it worked for those people, right? And even though I didn't have issue with how I was moving, I was intentional in how I was moving, and she just found that unattractive. And it's like, okay, like that can happen. But even then, I probably made some adjustments to maybe not move as much or not use my hands as much. But no, it's just something you have to think about all the time, and the universe will make sure that you focus in on it if you're not.
I think one of the key words you use in that soliloquy was awareness. I think a lot of comics have to be aware. Definitely body movements, what you wear, what you say, how you say it, things like that. I think that is key for comics. So I'm just now getting aware of like my body. but it's only like right here. I'm only like, I haven't got down to the rest of the body. I'm just like, where the eyes, where the head doing? Like that's it. That's where I'm at right now. Like in some of my jokes, I'll tell them with like bigger eyes or something like that, and that's where I'm at. So we're gonna keep working our way.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta start somewhere, man. I mean, hey, if you're focusing on the 8x10s right now, that's fine. You'll get to the rest of it. Just give it time.
That's hilarious, man. Okay, as we start to wrap this up, I always end with the same question. Who is on your Mount Rushmore for comedy?
Man, I'm one of the worst at this because I don't. Let me say this, and I think I don't look at most comedians with reverence at all. I just don't. I never came up that way. Again, I was a hip hop dancer. I was a b-boy. I was breaking. So to me, breaking is infinitely cooler than comedy to me, right? Especially when I was a kid, even though I love comedy. So I never looked at comics with a lot of reverence. Being in comedy for so long, even less now. But I'll say in terms of comedians who I just grew up just loving to watch all the time, Bill Cosby. Yes, he's a fucking monster on the stage and off. So let me get that out the way. As a person, he fucking stinks. As a comedian, you'd be hard pressed to find a comic that's better than him. That's just a full stop. Also, he's a rapist. He's a rapist and monster.
That's a good comedy special name if he came back out with comedy instead of monster.
Oh yeah, that's the only way he could come back, right? So there's that Martin Lawrence. Loved him as a kid. He was the first CD I ever bought. Like the first comedy CD I ever bought was Martin Lawrence's Talking Shit. Chris Rock. He was I bought his first album, Born Suspect, I believe it was, or Born Criminal. I can't remember the name. So Cosby, Rock, Lawrence, Lewis Black. I loved when I was younger. I loved his angst and anger. That's what, 4?
Yeah, that's 4.
4. How many people are on Mount Rushmore?
4.
4? Fuck it. Yeah, I did it. Hell yeah.
Now you've been dropping gems all interview. What is one lasting piece of motivation or advice that you can give to anyone listening to this right now?
I'd say, work hard. Write. It's okay, especially if you're a young person. If you're like someone in your 20s, live life. That'll make you funny. Have experiences. So while you do work hard, don't be just living that comedy life, because you won't be funny that way. Like it won't work. You actually have to live a life, date, have an orgasm or two, clean your apartment. You know what I'm saying? Go on vacation. Do mundane shit to have real life experiences that then you can talk about on stage. Be kind to people. Be kind to comedians, because comedians often aren't kind or kind to themselves. But Sumac Tolgalkar, who was a Columbus comedian, amazing comic. So one of the biggest things I always took from Sumac is that he was just always relatively pleasant to people. Even if he wasn't in the best mood himself, he could at least he would say hello to people, and he'd go on about his business. He wasn't shitty to anyone. And so be kind to people, be kind to your peers, because you don't know these people. You know what I'm saying? You guys are in a professional setting, or you're in a setting where you hope to one day be a professional. So there's no good goddamn reason to be hostile to an individual who's not doing that to you. So long as they ain't doing something that disrespects someone's personal space or values or ethics, man, just be professional, be cool. And as you come up and as you go forward and as you get better and progress as a comedian, always remember that you are a comedian. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not a heart surgeon or no shit like that. So don't walk around like your shit don't stink. That's one of the weirdest things that I see some comedians do.
Oh, I forgot. Hold on.
Message.
So, tell people why they should listen to Comedians in Bed.
Why should they listen to comedians?
Comedians in Bed.
Oh, well, I mean, you get to have very, very honest and thought-provoking conversations about stand-up comedy. If you're one of those people who likes to just listen to comedy from a comedian's perspective, then this is definitely the podcast for you, because, you know, he has a lot of very talented comedians on who can give their perspective on this thing that so many people love and enjoy.
So, Setoiyo, tell people where they can find you at, man.
You can find me on all the social media platforms at Setoiyo1. That is SETOIYO number 1. So you can find me there on Twitter. You can find me there on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok. My TikTok's a little bit more political. So it's a different flavor than all my other social media platforms. But yes, that is where you can find me. Also, I have a comedy album out that was released by Helium Records called The Foreigner. You can find that on Spotify, Amazon, and wherever else they iTunes and wherever else they do that streaming shit.
Run those numbers up, man. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. My YouTube channel is where we come here every Tuesday live at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then if you miss it, that's okay. You can check this out wherever you listen to podcasts. Just type in Comedians in Bed and make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. If you want to see weekly clips, you can go ahead and do so at our IG page at Comedians in Bed Podcast. I want to thank my man Setoiyo for coming on here again. Make sure you download that album and check him out if you're in the Philly scene or if he is in a scene near you. Setoiyo, we want to thank you once again for joining Comedians in Bed. Felines, we'll see you guys next week.
Appreciate y'all.